everybody. Good evening. Thanks for being here. My name is Matt Neidick, for those of you who don't know me, and I'm the athletic director here. We also, this evening, will have Mr. Phil Wilkie, who's our assistant athletic director and head strength coach, and Mr. Leslie Morris, who's our head athletic trainer, who comes from us from Willowbrook Methodist Hospital, as we try to give you guys some ideas and answers about the upcoming school year, as everybody's kind of been on pins and needles. And just preface this by saying at 4:30 this afternoon, I got another email saying that on Wednesday afternoon we will be having another conference call with our State Association of TAPS about possible more changes that might be coming. So I'm going to try to give you some information tonight about where we're at, some of the things that we're doing here at Concordia, and what we're really kind of looking forward to as this begins. But if we can bow our heads in a word of prayer real quick. Heavenly Father, thank you so much for this evening. I thank you for everyone that's here as stakeholders in Concordia Lutheran High School and Concordia Athletics, and their vested interest in doing what is best and what is the best solutions and ideas at this time. I pray that you watch over this meeting. It's your name we pray. Amen. Just again, if you want to see some of that stuff information-wise, just those. We also have Mrs. Betsy Barton, who is our administrative assistant. But the three of us, kind of as a team, all the way back in late April and early May, as we began our process of trying to get athletes back on campus, have kind of been the focal point of making decisions in the athletic department and what we've done, from our summer workouts that many people have participated in this summer to our ideas of how we're going to try and deal with our current situation, right, in our athletic department and where that might go. So in the questions that I ask of all of you, we kind of had a few main topics that came up. The number one was, are we going to play? Right? The fear that we're not going to have a season, right, at all. I'm not going to break this down in a whole bunch of detail, but one of the biggest challenges we face right now is, yes, Concordia Lutheran High School is committed to having athletics. Not every school is in that same situation. I say this lightly because I don't take the Lutheran Church Missouri Synod lightly at all, but it's great to not have them governing over us 100%. A lot of our other private schools have church bodies that are governing over them directly and telling them. For example, somebody that I serve on a committee with for TAPS, our state association, they had to put in 4 proposals of how they were going to do summer workouts, right? And then we're told they had to wait a month to see if any of those proposals would be approved, right? And so a lot of loopholes to try to go through. The next one was, what will games look like for us? And we'll address that. What will be done for safety? What if my athlete is an online learner, right? How would that play in for us? And then what is it going to look like if we're trying to get people to athletic events with transportation? And what we do know in all of these situations that it's very fluid for us. We are trying to stay on top of it. In our TAP State Association, and we want to say, yes, we're committed to athletics, right? In our TAP Association, I am the president of our athletic executive committee for the entire association. So I'm pretty much always getting information before people, working closely with the board of directors of TAPS in the office, trying to keep us ahead of the curve, right, on that. So some of you might have heard from your coaches. You might have read some emails that we sent out from the athletic department. TAPS, along with UIL, since at least the majority of them, if you have any friends or family that are in a public UIL school that are 1A through 4A, they actually started sports today, right? UIL, which is the public schools, so those are the ones that are around us, are 5A, 6A, they are not starting sports until September 7th, right? mainly because all of them are in major metroplex areas or suburban areas, much like the majority of TAP schools. Um, so we had the differences there. You're out in West Texas, you're in Alpine, Texas, where you may not even ever had a case of coronavirus. Why can we not do sports, right? So it's a question where obviously in the city, in the suburbs, it's been a little bit different, at least reported to us, and the numbers are a lot different. So TAPS decided that, and actually was the first state association that came out, right, for us, which stands for Texas Association of Private and Parochial Schools. There's 231 schools in our association, right? That makes us larger than over half the states associations in the country. Right? TAPS is the third largest athletic association, school association in the country. So that's a lot of schools, right? And so they came out and said, we're going to push to September 7th is when we're officially going to start. So I joke with people all the time, there's three things that would make Texas succeed. You take away religion, you take away guns, or you take away high school football, right? And the state will succeed, right? And so you can imagine what happened when all of a sudden the football coaches were told, you're going to have a 6-week season, right? Our football coaches were fantastic. They, of course, out of our 6A Division I level, which is 25 schools, it was the only football program I did not get a phone call from when that came out. About what were we doing? We're trying to kill high school football. I'm a former high school football coach. I would not kill football, right, at all. And so then what happened was other complaints that came in, and so a week later, actually 3 days later, the UIL announces their schedule, and they say, we're going to start September 7th, and we're going to play football all the way through January. We don't know where, but we're going to do it, and we're going to play 10 games. Well, you know, then people started freaking out, how are we going to do that? Their situation's a lot different at Klein High School than Concordia Lutheran High School, sharing athletes. So our state association came back and changed some of those dates. And so if you ever want to, right, you can go to taps.biz right there. That is their website. Right? And they'll have a little link on there on the very front page. It says COVID-19 protocols or start dates. I can't remember the wording. It's changed so many times. And they have all the stuff set up for, right now, the fall and the winter sports. Right? But again, I'm telling you, Wednesday afternoon, I have another meeting. Right? And so with all that, there's also some other things. The other thing comes into when you start school, you can make all your practices mandatory. Right? So if we wanted to start school next Monday, like some private school, you can make all your fall sports mandatory for practices. That's why some of you probably, if you have a fall sport athlete, you should have gotten an email from your head coach explaining to you that those practices will start mandatory practices. Summer's always been optional, just highly suggested. Right? Super highly suggested. All right? And so, but it's voluntary that they can start having after-school practices, right, at that time, up to 3 hours a day, including if they have athletic period. Right? So if you're a football player and you're going to be in 8th period athletics on a normal, even day, an hour and a half of that will be in the athletic period before school gets out. Right? Same thing with volleyball, right, in there. So it's tricky. Then when we get to September 7th, it's full game on. Right? We don't have any hour limitations for practices in our state association per the week. Right? So UIL, you get 8 hours of practice per week. I know that's a joke because I was the segment timer at Klein Collins when I coached football there, and I was always told to go reset the segment timer. All right? We're on segment 12. No, go put it back to 3. All right? So I don't know what vanished in that time, but that was part of my job. And so when we're there, so that's kind of what happens there. So anything that's in a fall sport, And the reason for that is not every school is starting in August. Right? We have schools in Dallas. Wonderful. Right? We have schools in Dallas that the Archdiocese is up there in Dallas is telling them they can't start practices until September 21st. So we tried to balance it out for everybody. I guess that hour's work of trying to make that work today didn't pay off on there. Okay. Okay. Now it's not even going to work on my computer. But again, if you want to go to Tap.Stop.Biz, you can see the things that are set up. The winter sports got moved to November start. So if you're a basketball, soccer person as of today, right, and swim, the official start date is November 2nd. Of course, you can use athletic periods for that if you're in there to start doing stuff prior to that. The spring, if you're here for a spring sport or your son or daughter plays a spring sport, we're going to start the last week of January right now. Right? And everything will still be done before Memorial Day, right, in May. Right? That's our guess right now. Right? So what will games look like? If you're going to come to a game, we are limited to 50% occupancy. Right? That is total occupancy, including cheerleaders, band, everything, indoor, outdoor. So for a home football game, which we have now our first home football game, which is September 25th. Now since we changed our first game of the year on September 25th, we will be selling online tickets to limit that. And then we will be handing out tickets for our students because we don't charge our students to come to games here at Concordia. If they want to pick up, we will have a limited number. We can have about 900 people total at our football games between home and visitor. It's 50% capacity. Even though most people sit on the outside or stand on the track, they don't count that as part of our occupancy, right, in there. They take the number of people who can sit in the bleachers. If we come to a volleyball game and we could have 600 people on a Tuesday home volleyball game, I would be super excited, as our gym holds 1,206 people, according to the fire marshal. So if that's a problem, but all spectators will have to wear a mask, right, if we can't maintain social distancing, right, inside there. We were going to ask that everybody self-screens. If you read that packet that the school sent out to do self-screening of yourself, I know that creates a lot of anxiety for some people of trust, right? But we will have signage up before people come into our building, right, on that they need to make sure that they have done this checklist to themselves. Right? We're not going to sit there with, taking every single person who walks in's temperature, right, on that. If you are an athlete playing volleyball, for example, and you are not playing in the game, you will be wearing a mask on the bench. Right? Only the girls, 6 girls on the court, and the head coach who will standing up will not have to wear a mask, right, on that. Right? And so, yes, I know what that's going to look like. And I know on Wednesday this week, for those of your volleyball parents, they're coming out with brand new protocols for volleyball. Probably the biggest thing that will happen in volleyball this year is they won't switch sides every game. Right? It limits the amount of who's touching what and all that sort of stuff. So you might just play on one side. Football, we are going to, just like we do during summer workouts, we will for athletic periods, they will need to have their mask on them. Right? Obviously, when they go out on the field, the ruling right now stands that as long as you are actively participating in the event, you do not have to wear a mask. Right? So we're going to follow those guidelines that we're given. If your son or daughter would want to wear a mask while they're playing, that's completely okay. It will not be required. Right? And the trickiest thing for all of us is every school is going to be different. There is not a universal policy that everybody is following. If you've had to read a lot of this documentation, a lot of it says you should, right? Or you might want to do this. It doesn't say you have to. Right? And so some schools, I know one school specifically, the Village School in our district, they are not going to allow any spectators to any of their sporting events as of today. Right? So that's their stance on things. We want to be able to provide opportunity as much as we can, right, to be there. So we will be live streaming a lot of our events, athletic events here on campus this year. Once that's completely installed and set up, we will have that information ready for you. If you don't want to come to a football game, you probably won't get play-by-play, but you could watch the game, right, on live stream. Right? So what about safety? Right? It's a big issue for all of us. It would be absolutely impossible for me to stand up here and say that we are guaranteeing you 100% that we're going to keep your athletes safe. I can't say that on any year, right? No matter what. Injuries happen, other things. For some reason, a couple years ago, we got hand, foot, and mouth disease, right? I thought that was like a nursery school thing, all right, that went through one of our locker rooms for a while, right, on that. What I can tell you is this. Right? The locker rooms and the showers are everybody's biggest concerns. What's that going to look like? We are going to limit our locker rooms to 50% occupancy, and those are all going to vary from team to team and what locker room they have. Some of them are much larger than others. And so if our occupancy in our football locker is 80 total, they can send 40 kids in there. Just like when they're here in school, they're going to be having a mask on when they can't, right, keep themselves socially distanced, and then will go out to practice. Other locker rooms, it might be 15. I'm the head girls basketball coach. We share half of a room with the volleyball team. So those numbers are going to, as we look at lockers and space, right, we will have those. Coaches will be there at the door. Obviously, I can't go in the girls' locker room, right? And so counting people going in, get in, get out, right, on that. Every locker room already, right, has a hand sanitizer dispenser inside of it. When I ask why I just don't stick a bottle in there, I ask people, have you been in a boys' locker room lately? I don't know what will happen to that bottle of hand sanitizer, all right? Right? And so we will, no. Yeah. Well, hopefully it would go with their lockers that were stacked full of clothing when we had to clean everything out at the end of the last year, all right, and clean that. But so that'll be in there, and we are going to limit the amount of showering. If some of you, for those of you who have athletic periods, sports, we have already moved those to the last period of the day, basically to say, let's get out of here, right? We don't need to shower. There's going to be some situations where that's going to happen if you're a swimmer, and because we don't offer, we don't have a swimming pool right here, they still have the ability to come here, right, use the shower. The girls' locker room with showers has individual showers, so it's easier to keep them separated in there to get ready for school that day. But as somebody who's had a last period athletic period for years, most of them just want to grab their stuff and go home, right? Every night we will be, thanks Coach Wilkie, right? We will be sanitizing and cleaning the locker rooms out, just like all the classrooms. Our cleaning crew will be using an electric static cleaning system that doesn't just clean the surfaces, but actually goes underneath everything. And in this, which makes it interesting, is we will be telling our athletes that every day they will be taking home whatever is theirs, right? Now, if you're a football player and you have helmets and shoulder pads, those will stay here, right? Those of you who are returning football parents, your son or your football player will need to bring a towel. We will not be washing towels, right, for them this year, right? So they will need that if they're going to take a shower or do anything at the end of football if they have it here, right? We're trying to reduce some of that because Football does a really good job. The other locker rooms, not a good job at all. They just pile them up and then they reuse them, all right, from the floor, all right? So, like, you know, Mr. Leslie and I have talked about, Mr. Morris, our athletic trainer, good personal hygiene is always important in every situation, especially now. So they will take those, and we will not be at events providing or practices, providing drinking stations, water bottles, those sort of things. We will have the ability to fill them up here, right, outside with the water hose, basically, but no longer are the days of you have the little six-pack of Gatorade bottles, right, and they're out there and everybody's just chugging it, or football with they call it the cow, where they just lean over and they just shoot the water into their mouth, right? At volleyball games, right, and I know most of our girl athletes, they like to get their own little containers with their names on it anyways, right, but the little cooler at the end of the bench with the individual cups will not be there, right? Then to reduce any type of sharing the best that we can, right, on this. And so we are going to keep up with this on our end. What we need from your end is all of that to be reinforced, okay? I get it. Right? Wearing a mask is not going to be fun. It's cumbersome for a lot of us. But we have got to do this so that we can try and make sure that we have seasons this year. Again, nothing is foolproof at all. We are going to really stress to our coaches, especially that are not in season, that individual skill development is extremely important. Limit the amount of in athletic period, after school activity where there's a lot of competition going on, right, as much as possible. Play a sport like tennis, you go to the tennis court, you're not right on top of each other. Right? But as some of you know that your athletes have been coming to summer workouts, when we came back in July, the changes were made where we were allowed to start doing some competition. Okay? And the truth of the matter in all of this is TAPS gave us one order for our schools, and that's all. We're under what's called local control. So if we just wanted to say, roll the ball out and let's go, we could do that, right? The TEA does not mandate private schools. Everybody's interpretation of the Attorney General's ruling about private religious schools is different on that. Right? And everybody uses it a little bit differently. But we're trying to mimic the protocols and the safety standards that myself talking to other athletic directors across the state, Mr. Morris working with people at Willowbrook Methodist, giving us the information that we think can work in our context, right, at Concordia Lutheran High School, is different than Klein Collins, right? We don't have 250 boys running to a locker room for football, right? We have 80. So we're going to have maps where, you know, the football team, so we have, you know, if we're going to 8th period athletics, we got football, boys basketball, boys soccer, right, and baseball all going to the same area right down there. Well, one of the groups is going to come down through here and go back that way, right? Probably two of them. Right? So that we don't end up with 150 boys at a corner right down here at the end of the hallway by the gym, to try to reduce a little bit of that, you know, tightness that can happen right there in the athletic wing. And the same thing for girls athletics and trying to help that. And like we've done with our summer protocols and rules, there's been a lot of things that we've looked at, we've changed, we've adapted as things have changed, and we believe that we've had a very productive summer, right, in being able to get our athletes up here. Right? In honesty and being transparent, we probably, in trying to be too open, had a couple of cases which we never had anybody really hear positive, but then we found out later on they tested positive, and we really didn't even have to technically email anybody, right, about that by rules, right? And just so you know, it is under HIPAA laws, we cannot tell you who it is, right? You could probably ask your athlete, and they probably know who it is if somebody tests positive, but we can't send you. So don't be sending emails to coaches, right? Who is it? Who is it, right? They probably post it on their social media because teenagers aren't the smartest people sometimes, all right, as well. And so this is kind of where we're starting and where we're going from. We're going to have coaches that are going to be monitoring kids. Hey, if any of you, especially if you ever were in a boys' locker room, does silliness and stupidity happen? Absolutely, right? We just have to remind them. Or if you would have been here June 1st and the first day we had, at workouts and we had any of our girls' sports on campus, it was a hug fest, right? Because our kids love each other. And that's one of the things that we promote at Concordia is that they actually like each other, right? And you just have to remind them and remind them and remind them, right, of social distancing, right, as best as possible. Are you gonna see a coach high five a kid probably at some time? I bet so, right? And it's not because they're going, I want to break protocol. A lot of us are just trying to adjust the way we do things, right? Again, we're not perfect, but we're going to do our very best, and we need you guys to partner with us in helping on this, right? And I think we're going to have a good plan. I know the three of us are tirelessly here all the time, and so we will be making sure. We've been doing it in the weight rooms, right, with our athletic equipment, sanitizing it down after use, right, and that sort of stuff to make sure that we're trying to do our very best that we can, right, in that situation. We will have questions at the end, so just if you have some, just hold on, right? If I'm an online learner and I want to participate in sports, this is a touchy issue for coaches because every coach is normally a type A personality and they want all their kids all the time, right? If you decide to go online schooling and you're in a team sport, right? Our team sports that are deemed by TAPS, right, for the boys are football, right? Soccer, basketball, and baseball. And on the girls' side, right, are volleyball, basketball, soccer, and softball. They have an athletic period because they actually have a start and stop date of when you can work with your kids after school. Every other sport has no guidelines. You can practice that sport all year round if you want to, okay? It's just the truth, right? The problem for us a lot of times is our coaches do multiple things and they can't always be available, right? But we could have track practice every day after school, right? And there's no guidelines ever. It's the wild, wild west, right? When it comes to that, there are no rules whatsoever on it, right? But those sports have one. So if your athlete is in one of those 8 sports, right, 4 for the boys and 4 for the girls, right, and they're going to be an online enroller, they must enroll in the athletic period. It has to be in their schedule, right? If they want to participate in athletics, when that period starts, which right now would be at 1:45 on that day, they need to be here, dressed, ready to go by 2:15, okay? If it's not, right, so if you have a cross-country runner, right, and they're starting, right, and school gets out at 3:15, they need to be at practice by 3:45, right, if they want to participate in athletics this year, right? And if we get to the point where there's too much excessive tardiness or no showing, then we'll have a conversation about future participation from that point on, right? Of course, if you read the school document, it's 6 weeks, you can make a decision on that. Right now, we are less than 3% of our athletes online, okay? So it's hard to say we're going to sit there and hold an entire team and wait for somebody to come there. You also have to understand with that comes the fact of you might miss something, you might miss some instruction that's part of that. Some of you might have coaches that go above and beyond. Some of you might not. They may stay a little bit longer and help you out. They may be able to talk to Mr. Wilkie, who's usually here till 5:30 or 6 if they missed a weight room session, and make that up at the end of their practice, right? But we've got to have some type of guidelines in there to hold them accountable and make them stay part of the team, okay? Right in there on that. And so that's where we're at. It's a big decision. The public schools, because the UIL came out and said they were going to do this, they're having a logistic nightmare how they're going to make it work. We have the ability to move most of our athletic periods to the end of the day, right? Which helps us. So what do you do at the Woodlands High School if your athletic period is fourth period in the middle of the day, right? How do you get up there? How do you get back, right? And then there's, for those of us that are in athletics, there's periods. There's this very interesting flex day, right, that will be at the middle. And that, when that whole planning process is done of what that looks like, more information will be coming, right, for you here. We are doing our best on that flex day where all the extracurriculars have a block period to create as least conflict between fine arts and athletics as possible, right? So that those student athletes can do as much as possible, right, in there, right? So if we have, 15 cheerleaders or in choir, you don't put them in the same hour-and-a-half block, right? Because you don't want that conflict to occur, right? You want them to be able to do the best, right, as we can. One of the last things is transportation. Right? Our transportation costs will probably go up this year, but that's okay. We rent a lot of buses from Goodman Bus. They have a lot of good protocols that we think that are in safety things and cleaning process that have been put into place. So if we rent a Goodman Bus, Yellow Dog, the old school ones that most of us probably rode on at some time or another, and let's say it holds 40 is its capacity, we're only going to put 20 on it. They will be masked up while they're riding. And so, not that the boys do this, but the girls have a tendency to do this. There won't be a little snuggling, sharing headphones and AirPods and all that sort of stuff, and the coaches will take care of that. If you want to take your athlete to the game, if you're in that position, right, to do that, we communicate with the coaches on that, that will be possible for this year, but you will follow the school issue transportation. Okay? So if I had a daughter, which I only have a son that'll be a freshman here this year, right? But if I had a daughter, my wife wouldn't come pick her up and then stop over at the boutique, right, and then grab a snack, and then just meet the team at the game. All right? When there. It all travels still together. The struggle for that, and I'm sure there will be some parents who want to do that, is what do you do if it's at a school that doesn't allow spectators? Okay? And you just drove 45 minutes, and then you just got to sit in your car. Right? I guess maybe you could go to the boutique and, go shopping and whatever at that time during that event. And we've always had, in most of our sports here, we have a couple that don't, you're always allowed to, after the event, check your athlete out with you and drive home because we're not a neighborhood school. Right? And if we're playing at Lutheran South and we have players that live in Cypress and we have people that live in Willis and we have people that live in Katy, right? We're going to allow that to happen. Every coach in America loves their whole team to ride together on the way home because that's team bonding, right? Win or lose, they should be together. But we understand that, and so we're going to try to keep that together. But again, if we have a coach bus for football, right, we're going to look at the occupancy of that, right? And so we'll see how many we can fit on there. We might even have travel rosters for certain sports this year who can travel, right, and not just take everybody, right, that everybody wants to go. If we, as an athletic department, decide that that's not necessary to travel a certain group, for example, we have 2 district football games in San Antonio, right? 'Cause that's how big our district is, from Houston to San Antonio. For football, maybe we don't need to take a group, right, for that, right, to limit that transportation for this year. It's not what we would like to do, right, but we're in a unique situation, and we're going to assess that, right? And then we might get to the winter, and it might be completely different, right? And we might get to the spring, and it might be completely different, right? And just like you guys have had with school, how we should do school, and everybody's got their opinions, right, and on that, everybody's had their opinions about school. I sat in a 5-hour meeting talking about flipping seasons, right? And watched people give passionate arguments, right? That let's just play the spring and the fall because the spring sports are more socially distanced than, right, the fall sports. Because baseball in some ways kind of is social distancing, right? Not a lot of people around each other, the dugouts. But the problem with that would have been if something would happen. And I don't know what an outbreak is, right? Is it 1 kid? Is it 5 kids? If I have 100 kids in a program, right, where does it go? The school's got a 10% rule, right? And we'll try to follow those guidelines as much. But if I have 20, right, kids in girls cross country and 2 girls get it, do we shut it down for the other 18 that aren't positive, right, at that situation? But we talked about flipping the spring sports, but then what happens if we had another situation we had to shut down and now you're a softball, baseball, track coach, and you just lost 2 seasons in a row? For what? The underlying, to save high school football, all right? That's the honest truth, right, is what it really was about at that moment, right? And so I was very proud to be part of an organization right now that has said this is what we're going to do, right? And we're going to provide. We in TAPS held out last spring. For those of you who had athletes here last year, we held out to the very last moment, right? We had 7 different plans to how to finish the spring sports, right? And make them work to provide opportunities for our athletes. And, you know, when the governor says, nope, it's over, right? It's over. And so what we've done now is we've tried to set up a plan, right? And we're going to communicate to you guys as much as possible, right, when things come out. So if I get out of my meeting on Wednesday and they change some more dates, we're going to compose an email and we'll send it out, right, to know what's going on. But right now, right, our plan is we're starting school, right, on August 25th. Right? That's when our fall mandatory sports practices will begin. Right? Volleyball can start playing games, official games, right, on September 8th, day after Labor Day. Right? Football can have its first scrimmage on the 18th and start playing games on the 25th. Cross country can start running. Right? Meets by September 11th if they want to, which is probably, you would think, ironically, you wouldn't think it would be, but it's the hardest thing right now to schedule because no park wants that many people inside their park, right, to run right now. Right? So if you have a big, giant, wide open field, right, and some property, we might be able to put some flags and design a course and be able to run out there on that. Our state association has all of its state championships still planned. Again, some of that has to deal with getting facilities and what are those facilities going to allow us to do. And so those are your volleyball parents, and our volleyball team has been very successful and make it to the Final Four. That's on the calendar and it's scheduled to be there, right? State cheer has been moved a little bit, right, to go along with the dates. And we're going to try to make it happen, right? And if TAPS is going to have a season, right, Concordia Lutheran Athletics is going to participate, right? That's what our absolute 100% goal to do is, right, this year. I just want to thank publicly in front of you guys, from our head of school and principal down, that have been very willing to let us in the athletic department kind of be able to guide ourselves, right, and not be overbearing. Always wanting to know what we're doing, right, but not being overbearing in the point of, well, you can't do this, you can't do that, you shouldn't do this. Right? You guys, since you're the ones who work in it, you guys make the best decisions, right? And if you've had an athlete up here this summer and your coach, it would be great for you to send out a message to your coach for being thankful for doing that, right? Because not only is it their time, right, that they're giving, they don't get paid for, right, in the summer, but it's, you know, they're up here adjusting and adjusting and adjusting, right, asking me every day, and sometimes I couldn't give them an answer because I just didn't know, right, what we were going to do the next day. But here, before we go tonight, what I'd like to do is I'd like to just open it up, right? It should go without saying, but let's respect everybody's questions, right, and everybody's opinion. And we, in some way, shape, or form, if we can, will try to give you our best answer. So if it falls more on the medical side, Mr. Morris would probably be, right, will be a lot more informed than me on that, right, with medical stuff. If it's more like what we're actually a season or a sport, myself, I could answer that question for you. So does anybody have anything? Yes, sir. Yes, we will. If final registration, we will have that set up next Wednesday and Thursday is our two final registration days. And so we have freshman, sophomore one day, junior, seniors the other day. When you come through, those season passes will be available. Yeah. That's all sports. All sports. We have vans. So if you know, we have 15 passenger vans. So you cut that in half, and then 7. I mean, we got to have a coach on there or 2 driving it, hopefully. And so is that efficient for us or not right now? What team could that be? I mean, I don't. It might be our golf team when golf season rolls around, but. Well, lacrosse, since it's a spring sport, I mean, right now, we would say we're probably going to have buses to take them to games, right? And it might be 2. It's unknown on the numbers. Yes, we are looking, we're going through the guidelines for what UIL and what some other schools associations have done for working in the concessions. One of the basic things is that we don't really do it. We just sell Chick-fil-A and candy and chips and that sort of stuff at most of our, out of our concessions, but we'll have those opportunities to do gate and those sort of things as well. But trying to make sure what does that exactly have to look like before we offer those things out. Yes, sir. Sub-varsity, I know our coaches are really trying. A lot of times for us, like for example, if you're talking football, we have to pick up because some of the teams that we play might not have 2 sub-varsity teams. We have 3 schools in our district now from San Antonio, so we don't normally play sub-varsities against each other. So Coach Lindquist has been working his tail off, trying to pick up as many games as possible now that the varsity schedule is set, at least for today, right, on there. And same thing, if you have a volleyball parent, or I'll just give you my case. I had since March, I've had my girls' basketball schedule completed, right? And then last week, UIL canceled every tournament. That was 4 tournaments that I go to, right? So they're not allowed to have any type of tournaments in public schools or play in any tournaments. So now everybody's kind of been thrown up. Volleyball, if you have a volleyball player, most of the tournaments are in August. Well, now you can't start playing games until September, and all these big public schools were just told they can't host a tournament or be in a tournament. So it's a scramble, right? But I know all of our coaches are working tirelessly, that's not the right word, right, to try to get that figured out. Coach Lindquist and I just for football just had that conversation this morning. And, hey, if it means that we have to play St. Thomas twice, we have to play St. Pius twice to get games in and not just be sitting around every Thursday, it's what we might have to do on that. We are also not helped by the fact that we have no public school district that's connected to us that's allowed to play private schools, right? That hurts us. We used to be able to pick up a Tomball freshman team or a Woodlands freshman team and play a game, right? And they are specifically told no, right? Especially Tomball ISD now. Yes, ma'am. Correct. They will eventually, but we're going to try to not make it just all that, right? So that it's not, you know, they should be using some of their time in the weight room, right, as part of their requirements. But they just don't roll out the ball and let scrimmage for 45, 50 minutes so that we don't have intense contact all the time, right? That's what we're suggesting to them, but there will be play. I mean, it's going to happen, right, you know, on there. Yes, ma'am. Leslie? If we have an athlete test positive, what's going along with the school?
Well, if an athlete tests positive, they're going to stay home, you know, and then we'll find out where they were, who they were around, and everything. And then if we need to send out an email, like we send out some this summer, you know, for the school, if somebody tests positive, we're going to contact everybody they came in contact with, let everybody know. But if it's just one person, that person's going to stay home. It's not, we won't shut down the entire program for one person. Yes, right.
Yes, we have some schools that have basically said if they have any cases, they're going to shut their schools down, right? You know, and because of the context of who's, you know, like for us here at Concordia, one of the struggles is because we have freshmen that take sophomore classes and sophomores that take junior classes, they're not all, this is the freshman and they only do these classes. And it would be easier to do that. But right now, we've kind of set our goal on a 10%. You know, if 10% of this building test was positive, we would shut down the school, right? And athletics will be similar, right? But again, like I said earlier, it kind of depends on the situation. We will notify everybody, and if you don't want to keep your athlete home, keep them home. I mean, I've told every one of our coaches I would not expect of one practice or one game where you have every single one of your players this year, right? The old days of drug and dump should be gone, right? Drug my kid up and dump them at school, all right, so they can make it there for the second half and play sports. I'm not going to stand here and say that I never did that, right, as a player. I've never done that to my kids. But, you know, but those are things that we can help everybody, you know, by doing that, right, in that situation. Yes, sir. We would notify, right, the group that they're around, and then you would need to take them to get tested. We're not doing testing at school, here. No. No. You know. Yes, sir. I don't think so right now. The school policy is not that.
Yeah, if you trace back.
Right.
So, through the school, yeah, they send out, do they send out the return to school thing? Yeah, it was on the return to school plan, I believe, they got sent out. Should have got sent out through the school, wasn't from athletics. Right, CDC guidelines, they change. I mean, we worked on this thing for the last couple of weeks, and as we worked on it, I mean, it was changing like every other day. Like for example, they had, if you had symptoms within 72 hours, free for 72 hours, that got changed last week to 24 hours, being symptom-free for 24 hours. You know, on the contact tracing deal, what they've seen is, you know, if one person tests positive, we're going to contact all these people, tell them to monitor their symptoms. You know, it's not necessarily that, you know, because somebody tests positive, did they have actually direct contact? It's hard to say. You know, the whole quarantine deal, now they're just saying, you know, self-monitor for 10 days. You know, if you had a true direct, like if I'm sitting here and we're talking and we can trace that back, then they do recommend the 10 days. So it's hard to say. What we're going to do is we're going to say, your student came in contact with them, here's what you need to look for, you know, and then we find out, you know, kind of how, like if we can pinpoint, you know, somebody that had direct contact, true direct contact, then yes, we'll go from there. But it's hard to say, you know, if we had a whole football team, one person, who were they around? It's hard to. Mm-hmm. Right. 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 Right, and that's a good recommendation. I mean, that's kind of always going to be the recommendation is follow up with your doctor, you know, because what we don't want to get into, well, you had contact with this person, you could have been around them, stay home for 2 weeks, and then that person could be around somebody else, now they stay home for 2 weeks. You know, if we have direct contact, you know, if we have somebody, usually you can kind of see where you've been. Like obviously same household, that's probably going to be direct contact most of the time. You know, if you're with somebody every day in the car, riding to and from school, that's going to be direct contact. You know, somebody that was at a game, did you have true direct contact? It's hard to say. You know, most of the time it's monitoring your symptoms. I mean, even for like me at the hospital, you know, if you had direct contact, the protocol is, you know, you still go to work. You go to work, you monitor your own symptoms, you wear your mask, you know, you monitor yourself, you know, the temperature twice a day. That's kind of that's the standard from the CDC, like for healthcare workers as well.
That is what TAPS is coming out with this week. They've been going back and forth that they want everybody to have a universal policy on that. The only thing we've really talked about at this point is that you can't, if a team forfeits, you can't count that like against them is the biggest concern everybody has. But yes, our district athletic directors have all agreed to that we would contact each other if they have a player test positive, what they're doing with their team, if they just played us, right? I mean, if they're not going to play us for 2 weeks, what are they going to do with that player? That's the whole thing that's still up in the air because what is every school going to do? everybody's going to handle it a little, just to tell you, everybody's going to handle it differently, right? And so, yes, we at least in our district have agreed. TAPS, our state association, is supposed to come out with a policy that says this is what everybody has to do, right, if there is a test, a positive test. Yes. Told me a softball there. Good. Yes, we're planning on it. Thank you. Anyone else? Yes, ma'am. There is a game that's going to be called Homecoming, which will be October 23rd. Now that the schedule is set, I don't know if they can dance 6 feet apart. Not the last homecoming I went to, they didn't. So that's why I did the coat room. But that's our date right now. The truth, it's not really the highest priority on things right now, and I hate to say that. I know it's a big deal for a lot of young people, but we hope that something else can be done. Maybe there's some type of celebration we can do for the kiddos at that time to help them out with that. But October 23rd is the date we've chosen. So, anything else? Well, I thank you for your time tonight and being here. Again, you can email me here at the athletic department if you have any more specific questions. Mr. Morris and the athletic training department will help you out. One of the things before I go, some people have had questions about our Rank 1 system, right, and getting the online forms filled out. Mr. Morris can help you with that. He's kind of more of a genius on that system than I am, right, and how that works out. One of the biggest things we find is when we download people's information, the wrong birthday gets put in for some reason. I've already had 2 basketball players that had the wrong birthday listed. So it's an easy fix for you to be able to get online, but you must have a physical before the school year starts, right, on file, a new one. Yes, ma'am. No, Mr. Morris actually would prefer you scan and email that to him, and then he uploads it right in to the system, right there. And then you can actually then keep the hard copy if you need it. Yes, sir. Then it's probably good. Then you're probably good. Yes. All right. Well, again, thank you so much for your time. If you have any questions, we'll be around for a little bit, and have a great night.